and then eventually you all perish. And when you
I mean,
do,
that is statistically.
when you do, this is the impact on the land that you left, and I would carry it forward and show like the 100 years, 500 years, 1,000 years, like what is the impact of what they
Show
did.
that they had a
That
legacy.
doesn't mean that we can't go
Mhm.
back, or that it's like, wait, you just, if that happens, then like we could never play. Which it's like, hey, I didn't say how you died.
When is a game of D&D finished?
When you say it is. The end.
Finished like in terms of sitting down for the session, or finished in terms of like the whole campaign. Like this is now close the book, it's
Like,
done.
yeah, like how do you end a game?
Mm.
Not a session.
Um.
Like,
Well,
With the words
what?
the end.
the end, right? I would say that statistically, probably when it's abandoned, that's probably how most D&D
Yeah.
actually wraps up. Is that eventually it's been 6 months, people just figure that they're never going to get to play that again.
My high school campaign, my DM wrote an epilogue that covered us getting to the big bad at the end,
Yeah,
fighting the boss in the epilogue, getting some cool loot,
right.
and then going our separate ways.
I think that ideally, I think an ending should certainly have should have that climax, whatever that, whether it's the big bad or some other thing like that, that should resolve. I like,
It should have a resolution to those conflicts.
yeah, I like there to be then sort of like a falling action, there should, I wouldn't ever want to end there. I would want to end a session later, at least, with the players having some agency in sort of describing, if they're assuming that their characters make it, however many make it, kind of placing themselves in the world in some way, and then following that with kind of an additional sort of epilogue. And then honestly, like I would we would close that chapter, but I would always want to, like, does it ever really end? Because I would want their characters in some ways to weigh in on future events if need be, like not as a player, but like I feel like the dream, maybe this is, I don't know if,
Player cameos in the future.
or just the idea of like, oh, somebody's so I've got a sorcerer character years down the line that's going to go to this like magic academy. I've got, that's actually largely organized by this character that I ran for a decade ago, and I'm going to send them questions to see how they would see that going. Like I just feel like that would be a fun way to like let the world continue, and then they respond back because I haven't talked to them in 8 years.
That
They're like, could you
is
just leave me alone? I don't
the
want to think
dream.
about D&D anymore. Um,
Oh, that's like a legacy TV show bringing back a cameo from a beloved character from the previous TV show.
yeah. So I mean that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of but like the plot should end, but the imagination doesn't have to ever, I think. And that's
Yeah.
that. Yeah, that's what I would say.
So, but say you end the plot.
Yeah.
And then you have your denouement.
Mhm.
And your denouement is you, like, I feel
Sorry,
like the
what word?
tendency would be to say
You say
you get your
denouement?
Denouement. It's
rewards.
like the send off, right?
Yeah, the denouement is after the climax. It's the
Is that
happily
French?
ever after scene.
It's Yiddish, actually. No, I don't know what, I think it's French.
So you said, okay, you beat the big bad, and you know, what's the happily ever after? You have a scene,
Yeah.
aka the denouement, for where do you go? What do you see your characters get to do to enjoy
Mhm.
their freedom or whatever?
Mhm.
The tendency, I think, would be here's some new magic items.
Mhm.
Here's your new
Mhm.
stronghold. Here's your,
Mhm.
or whatever they call it in D&D. You know, you buy a house.
Yeah.
Now your character has a house.
Right.
Or you level up,
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, but now we want to use our new
Oh, sure.
gifts, right? And
Yeah.
then you've just kind of made it another cliffhanger.
Well, so
And it's not
I
really
would
an
do
end.
two things, because I think it can. I think the idea
Is it
of
a cliffhanger or is it a hook?
leaving it open for future sort of like high five, we all got together again, let's play a one shot, bringing back our old characters, that could be cool. I think leaving the door open for that kind of stuff is neat. I would follow the trend of like, I won't say to avoid spoilers, but some of my favorite shows of all time have done this, where I think a really satisfying ending and my contribution to the epilogue of the story would be, yes, that's where all the characters, where they place themselves, they get a wizard's tower, they do whatever, they get a library, that's what they do. And then my plan, and none of my players are here, so they won't know this until it happens, is to say, and then eventually you all perish. And when you
I mean,
do,
that is statistically.
when you do, this is the impact on the land that you left, and I would carry it forward and show like the 100 years, 500 years, 1,000 years, like what is the impact of what they did.
Show that they had a legacy.
That doesn't mean that we can't go
Mhm.
back, or that it's like, wait, you just, if that happens, then like we could never play with it. It's like, hey, I didn't say how you died. Everybody probably dies at different times in different ways, and that story is, we may never tell. But I feel like that would make whatever goes on, like whatever you walk
It
away,
gives a really
it's
satisfying
the
closure without
whole
walking
thing
out
is
being
shut. Like you would
speechless.
never have to go back to that, unless it was just for like
Yeah.
a fun, a fun idea to use those characters in a different way. But I get what you're saying. Like it
Yeah.
could be such a neat setup. But in my case, like I think the two campaigns that I'll see end with this similar type of closure to them are finishing at like 17th or 18th level, and it's like, that's probably good. Like I probably don't need, like, you could always, I guess, do, but that, depending on the type of one shot you're doing with 18th level fights, like, does everybody have 6 hours to spare? Because that's probably what it's going to take. And that could be fun too,
Just
but
my
Okay.
yeah, I guess it depends. It depends. So you feel like it would be a
I've never
cliffhanger?
played above 6th level.
Well, I just feel like you like it's hard to say, okay, we did our thing and it's done,
Mm-hmm.
because it's an ongoing story by default. You
Well,
have
yeah,
to
because
like,
happily ever after is a myth.
well, but we're telling myths. But you have to
Yeah.
decide when you want to put the happily ever after in.
Yeah, sure.
And
Mhm.
until you do, it's like, well, we can do one more session, it's
Mm-hmm.
an ongoing story.
Yep.
So like, how would you decide, yeah, it's time, let's make new characters next time we meet or whatever,
Um,
besides
I was
having new players?
Sure.
in college. We played almost exclusively one shots, but my favorite campaign I ever played was a 3-shot where the 6 of us all played siblings. And we had our 3 sessions, and we had our conclusion at the end of that trilogy of sessions. And then 6 months later, we had a family reunion, and we brought all the players back to just have another one shot, not in the same setting, but in a completely different setting with a different spoopy sort of thing um, happening. And that was a really fun way to like leave the story that we had
Mm-hmm.
complete and honor it, but then also have this fun little spin-off on the side.
So I've never had a one shot last one session.
Ah,
Also, all of our sessions were 6 to 8 hours long, so
Well, that's one way to make it a one shot.
it's a good way to get a one campaign or a 2 or 3 shot campaign in.
Yep.
It's also a good way, depending on your players, to never do it again.
Could be.
We started at about 6 p.m. We'd take a break from like 8 to 8:30 for dinner, and then we'd finish at 2 a.m.
I mean, that sounds like a great time, to
It
be
was the
honest.
best
It
time.
also
College
it also
was the
depends.
best.
Different groups have different levels of like social pausing they'll allow in a game, I've noticed. Um
Mm.
in a way that like sometimes I've seen and been a part of, sporadically tables enough to know that like some of these groups would drive me absolutely bonkers as a player or as a DM, where it's like, wait, you guys pause
Mhm.
to like have social conversations this often? Like this would drive me up the wall. It's sort of like that. It's sort of like when you're
Oh my
playing a
gosh,
board
yeah.
game and somebody is like always like not aware that it's their turn. And it's like he's just,
Mhm.
can you just, you're next, you're next. Can you get you to figure out your thing? But you don't, you can't say that. You look like a crazy person if you said that.